Good morning, dear children. In your previous English class, you read the poem The Sparrow, and the verses were very well explained to you. So today, you are going to do the assignment given based on the poem you read and understood. I expect you all to complete your work neatly in your literature notebook. Now, in today's class, we are going to begin a new chapter of literature reader named The King Who Limped, which is in the form of a drama. This play has been written by Monica Thorne. She is said to be Anthony Trollope's sister, who is a successful writer. So let us enjoy the drama. Before we begin, I must tell you that this play is about a newly crowned king who decided to test his courtiers to find who were true to him, and on the other hand, who just tried to please him by any means. The characters in this scene are Prime Minister, who is the chief advisor of the king, Chancellor, who is a higher official of the king's court, two ladies in waiting, that is the first lady and the second lady. Courtier is a nobleman. So, let us begin. So, the scene begins where the courtier, the prime minister, the chancellor, and the ladies in waiting are in the audience room, waiting anxiously to meet the new king. Prime Minister, who is quite fat and important looking, says, "Well, I think it is simply stupid having a king none of us have seen. Why? He might be Chinaman or an African for all we know." Now the first lady, who is tall and slim, she says, "Don't be silly." Now the second lady says, "You shouldn't call Prime Minister silly. It's not respectful." "Why not, if he is silly?" Now the Chancellor says, "It doesn't matter how silly he is if he is the Prime Minister." So the Prime Minister rises and sits on the throne, pushing the Chancellor off the arm, says, "Please, I beg you to stop quarreling." The Chancellor says, "You will get into trouble if you are found sitting on the throne. You would better get up." The courtier, who is a handsome young man with a kind heart, says, "I expect the Prime Minister found the steps hard. Didn't you, Your Excellency? Very hard, and His Majesty is keeping us waiting a long time. I am anxious, very anxious." "What about this new king whom none of us know? Why, he may be a tyrant, a perfect tyrant." The second lady asks, "What's a tyrant?" "One who makes you eat rice pudding when he knows you hate it." "I like rice pudding." "You like anything to eat." So, as we see here, the Prime Minister, who is the chief advisor of the king, feels that it is not very sensible to have a king whom they do not know at all. Here are two ladies. One of them finds it silly when the Prime Minister says so, but the other lady feels that one should show respect to the Prime Minister and not call him silly. But the Chancellor, who is a higher official of the king's court, also says that it is not right to call the Prime Minister silly. In the meantime, the Prime Minister, who was sitting on the king's throne, asked them to stop quarreling. The chancellor advises the prime minister to get up from the throne, or else he might be in trouble. So at this, one of the courtiers are the other nobles in the king's court, mock at the prime minister and says that he must have found it difficult to climb the steps to the throne. This is how the prime minister, the chancellor, the ladies of the court continue conversing among themselves, waiting eagerly to welcome the new king whom they have never seen before. The prime minister makes a guess and says that the king might be a tyrant. Now, who is a tyrant? A tyrant is a cruel ruler who has complete power over the people in his country. So the second lady explains this word tyrant as a person who can make you eat rice pudding. Rice pudding is a sweet dish which you call kheer in Hindi, even when he knows that you hate to eat it. This is how they converse among each other and try to guess as to what kind of person the king would. So let us continue reading further. The chancellor says, "Will you stop being rude to one another? The king may be here any moment. Why are you staring out of the window?" The courtier, who was kneeling on the window seat, sees outside and says, "There are crowds of people in the street and it is pouring with rain. They don't seem to mind the rain. Now they are all waving their hands. Ah, that's queer." "What's queer?" The courtier says, "Never mind, you will soon see." But the second lady says, "But I want to know now." So they hear the sound of the trumpet coming closer. "You would better get off that throne, Jim Crow." "Stop calling me Jim Crow. My name is James Crowther. Sir James Crowther." As the third trumpet sounds, the chancellor says, "Here comes His Majesty." And both the prime minister and the chancellor stands on either side of the throne. "I do hope he is handsome." "Of course he is handsome." "I hope he won't want his own way too much." "Of course he won't want his own way too much." "Why shouldn't he want his?" "Be quiet. Here he is." Meanwhile, there are crowds of people in the street waiting for the arrival of the king. Although it is raining and the people are found waving their hands and they hear the sound of a trumpet. But the courtier finds something queer. Queer means strange or weird. The second lady wants to know what is it that the courtier finds weird. So now the sound of the trumpet is heard more clearly, and again the first lady wants the prime minister, whose name is James Crowther, to get up off the throne because at any moment the king may arrive. Now the second lady expects the king to be handsome, and the prime minister has a hope that the king would be considerate and not a dictator. So finally the king arrives at the court. Now two heralds enter blowing the trumpet. Who is a herald? He is a person at the court of the king who carries important messages and makes announcements. They are followed by the king, who is wearing a bowler hat. You can see the king wearing a bowler hat in the picture and walks with a pronounced limp. Limp means a person who is unable to walk straight due to some injury or difficulty. So behind him comes a page. A page is an officer who accompanies the herald. The page was carrying a dog on a cushion. Behind the page walks two neighbors, each of them holding a lead attached to the dog's collar. As the king goes up to the throne, the gentlemen bow and the ladies curtsy, but there's a buzz of astonishment at the king's unusual appearance. So the second lady says, "What a funny hat." And the Prime Minister also whispers and says, "Why, he limps." So two heralds enter, blowing their trumpet. What is a trumpet? It is a musical instrument, followed by the king, who wore a bowler hat instead of a crown and walked with a limp. As I said, limped means to walk in such a way as if the person finds it difficult to walk straight due to some injury or defect. And a page was carrying a dog on a cushion and two neighbors holding a lid attached to the collar of the dog. While the king goes towards the throne, the men and the women bow in courtesy, but they whisper to each other, since the appearance of the king with a bowler hat and walking with a limp seems very weird and unusual. The first thing they notice is the round dome-shaped hat that the king wears, and they also notice the king limping. Limping means langrana in Hindi. So that is all for today. Read the chapter till page 35 and try to understand the story. We will continue the story in the next class.